So Uranus will be retrograde from August 2021 until January 22. And in that time, we will very strong feel the transit of Uranus through the sign of Taurus. We will learn really a lot about positive and negative sides of this transit. Let me remind you that Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius in August. They're both retrograde. And their ruler, that's why, is also planet Uranus. So also those two planets that influence social and some mundane, on the mundane level, changes, they're also under the influence of Uranus. So we need to know what is exactly happening with Uranus. So Uranus is in Taurus from 2018 to 2026, and now it is in the second decade. Unfortunately, Uranus is in its fall in Taurus sign, so it can be potentially very, very dangerous. The last time Uranus was in Taurus was in the period from 1934 until 1942, and I guess you all know that it was the time of a Great Depression and great crisis in Europe, in economy and otherwise. Nazism appeared and it gets stronger in those years. New weapons were constantly invented and the economic system was in terrible crisis. I will not list in detail here what all happened in 1937 and 1938, when Uranus was also retrograde, as it is now. Just it was in that years retrograde at the 13th degree. Now it's in the 14th. It's a little difference there, but almost the same. So I will not talk in details. You can make the research and find out what was happening in the world in 1937 and 1938. And you will see that things will repeat in a way also in this our time. So in 21 at beginning of 22. So what we all know in those years was the rise of Nazism in Germany and fascism in other parts of the world. And we now have no doubts that we live in the time of neo-fascism and neo-Nazism. No matter how strong and how strange this can sound to some of you, this is really happening in the world. So this is the continuation of a certain political ideology that was militant, corporative, and globalistic in a way, as it is the politics of today, of those globalists who have their center in America, but they're actually everywhere. An important item of this ideology was social engineering, which is still more than present in the world. And of course, the representatives of this ideology developed the idea of eugenics that you most probably heard about. So I have to speak about eugenics now here. I wanted to avoid this, even if I mentioned this in some of my previous videos. But then unfortunately, I have to speak about that because we cannot get around it. It's so present that we have to know about it. So what is eugenics? This is a certain social philosophy that deals with changing the genetic code of man and eliminates from society all people, nations and races that are unclean, backward, unnecessary, superfluous or whatever, and allows only those who are superior and who have good genes to survive. Whatever that mean exactly, I'm speaking generally. So we cannot go deep into this issue here now, in this video, but it is generally known that Nazi idea about Aryanism was the result of several factors, and one of the most important was that they discovered Sanskrit and Vedas in ancient India culture. They discovered that in 18th century, but that idea of Aryanism flourishes in the 19th century. and it was part of Romanticism and so on. And this Nazi Aryan ideology spread among Nazis was actually the idea that they were superior. Those Nazi people were more superior than others, and they understood themselves as those old Aryans, you know. And how tragic, how ridiculous, and how wrong it was, I will not explain here. But if you study this subject, you will learn about that and you will gain more facts. However, it is important for us that it is repeated now. Social engineering is not the same as it was in the time of Nazism in the last century, although the ideology is very similar. How could it not be, one can say, when we know that now children and grandchildren of former eugenists continue their work and they present themselves as philanthropists? What is striking is that during the disease in question that we have experienced with in the year 2020, I'm purposely not saying the name of that disease. So with this disease in question, many elderly people died first in nursing homes, in these homes for seniors. So first they died in many countries. What is also obvious here, that there is different projects for every nation or every country. It is slightly different what is happening everywhere. Somewhere they were testing more, somewhere they were testing less, you know, and these kind of things. So it's a part of a program. And what is also obvious here, and what is the most important, is to know who is the target group of these neo-Nazis. And the target group are children. I'm very sorry to say that, but I have to say it, because we need to know what is happening and not to pretend that everything is fine. So the work of evil people who carry out this social engineering will reach its peak if they decide and they push through the policy of any country that this that's what they do with the needle. I'm purposely not saying what this is. If that become obligatory for children, then they will reach what they want to reach. And this is this eugenic on the top level. So the question is, can we find what we are talking about in astrology? Yes, of course we can find it. This is especially the symbolism of Uranus in Taurus. In my older videos about Uranus in Taurus, I talk more about the positive side of this transit. And if you want to find out more about it, check my YouTube videos. There are 3 different videos about Uranus in Taurus. But here I'm speaking about something a little bit different, and I speak more now about this negative side of the transit. Of course, every transit has positive and negative sides, and it's not only negative, but now this negative side of the Uranus in transit is very, very obvious.